Back at it again. It's another edition of the State of Football here, brought to you by the NFL Draft Bible, Part 28. RIC in the place to be. Rick Saratella telling it like it is here from the Jersey Shore. Of course, my co-host each and every morning, John Murphy, down in Nolans, and working our way across the country is David Turner out there in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got you covered around the country, the hot topics and the tough debates that people just don't want to have, but we're going to have those tough conversations. And you know what? The Denver Broncos are having a tough conversation with themselves this morning. Von Miller looks like a torn tendon, out for the season. Damaging to their playoff hopes. I mean, this is the face of the franchise. Much like the Derwin James injury we saw on Hard Knocks, when they panned to Coach Lynn after that injury, you could just see the thought process going through his head, John. And Bradley Chubb obviously coming off the injury. Where does the edge rush come from? It looks like this is a knockout blow to their playoff chances. I'll take it from this angle as a VP of player personnel, assistant GM there for Toronto. When something like this happens and it's a devastating blow to your team, do you feel the need to address the team? Do you have a conversation with the head coach, make sure he's even keel here? How do you approach a situation like this?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, you have to gather the rest of your staff, have them, make the understanding that everybody in the room knows what type of player was lost. But it has to occur at all levels, right? Can't have from the equipment people to the trainers, to everybody interacting with the players, can't have any of them kind of, walking around there going, oh man, can you believe that just happened? Man, I can't believe that guy's not going to play. You all know, kind of instantly if he was air casted on the field, right? Like if you see something, you kind of know it right away, whether you see it from the press box or from 5 yards away. You normally know how bad something is, by the, instant reaction. This is the last play of practice, right? And you hear freak injury. So, when you're in that situation, it's hard to say, but, it is a next man up business. Hey, Malik Reed, it's, this is really your shot now to step in as an undrafted free agent, last year, make the team. Well, now we're going to need you to do something other than just make the team. And for Bradley Chubb, unfortunately, you can't rush him back faster, because even when he was back, I think he was going to kind of be on a pitch count, or a rep count, in that sense, to not, kind of push too much of the workload on him. I think from that position, John Elway in the front office probably kind of kicks around to see, does anybody else have a pass rusher? Is there a guy out there, that you could get as a veteran substitute just to come in and help with the younger guys they have? They drafted that kid from North Dakota State. He's on the practice roster, so, I mean, there are some interior possibilities, but now you need to know. And it's hard in Denver's situation when the guys you're turning to on the field are young, right? You have a young quarterback. You have these young weapons, there. You do have Melvin Gordon, and Lindsey that you could turn to on that side, and on the other side, this is doubling down, right? You let Chris Harris go, you now lose, Von Miller, so I think you're counting on Fangio, and how he's been able to scheme things. But I think the biggest message is, hey, we still have to be excited that, our season is ahead. He's not going to be with us. And the bottom line is that's the bottom line. So you can choose how you want to react to this and choose what you want to do, and if you want to, bow your head and tap out and say that it's over, then take your ass out the door right next to Von Miller, and go, and that's where you need to be, and if you're going to do something about it, well, then show up here tomorrow and let's do something about it. I think that's the way you kind of have to, take something like this, even if afterwards I would be heading toward the shower and crying on my own time. That would be something I would be doing in my own time. But the message you would have heard was bring your lunch pouch, and your stuff tomorrow, and then I would proceed to closest shower stall and cry and listen to some Celine Dion and then, call it a day. But you really do. You have to put the best spin on it for the guys. You have to go find those 3 or 4 guys in the room that have shown some leadership skills or that you projected to have leadership skills and kind of give them that little, kick in the butt about, like it's your turn now. Any of those good little hallmark speeches that you have, you better start pulling them out, everywhere. And I think you have to be respectful, right? I mean, he's a all pro player. He's a heart and soul type guy of their team. So you have to respect the injury that was suffered, what he's going through as a player. But then, unfortunately, you have to kind of move that to the side, literally and figuratively, and figure out a way that, like, hey, the Titans aren't going to feel sorry for us come Monday. So, that's the good and bad news is the sticker shock of reality is you're back at practice today. The Titans are coming, and you don't want to go out there, game one and point the finger at a shell-shocked team, because you lost Von Miller. I think you have to kind of find a way to turn that around. And I would not be surprised to see, with Coach Fangio be able to do that. But it certainly makes their job a lot harder, especially in a division that we've talked about should be very much improved, and those other teams as well. I mean, that just gives, your Raiders pick a real shot there, and it also gives the Chargers, a little bit of a shot there too, because I think them and the Broncos would have been that team, that's in that mix for that, extra playoff spot. So it just made life a lot harder for the Broncos.
Yeah, obviously they're all gunning for those Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll have Danny Welniak from KCTV out there in Kansas City to give us a little preview for the Chiefs. Tomorrow we'll have Aaron Wilson to preview the Texans. But David, obviously a lot of excitement going into the season, and Drew Lock, strong play down the stretch, exciting young team, new quarterback. We're going to finally see Von Miller and Nick Chubb. Man, last play of the practice right here before the kickoff of the season, a couple days after the waiver wire. Tough news here in Bronco land, of course, 18 years as an NFL scout, CFL executive. You've been in these situations before. How damaging is this really, though, at the end of the day to the Broncos?
Well, again, like John was saying, this isn't one you shake off. I mean, you drink off, but then you get up and you got to get back to work in the morning and figure it out. It's not. I mean, this is a cornerstone. This is a cornerstone of your defense. It's built around this guy. This isn't one that you recover from easily, and it will take a group effort. I mean, last night on the podcast when Ryan and I were talking on Mass Sports Take, Denver was one of the young up-and-coming teams we really liked, and especially the offense with all those weapons. I mean, look at all the receivers they drafted and from the last couple of years and how they fit well together. And like you said, you got Drew Lock, who had a good push at the end of the year. You got tight ends and everything, and then they went and got Gordon. So that offense really looked good. And you thought the defense was complete with a premier pass rusher that was going to be coming in off the edge all the time. So, for me, yeah, it's a big blow, but they still have a good young team that they can, push and build around. And, after a couple of weeks, I think we'll see some trades. People still don't know what they have on their rosters. They don't know what to expect from some of the rookies. So the first couple, how people cut their rosters was interesting. We talked a lot about that on the podcast last night too. And to see, how some of these teams that are veteran laden and kept some veterans around might, trade some veterans week 2 or 3 now that they trust the rookies a little bit and got some live bullets going at them. You could rebuild and maybe get a piece to this puzzle, a couple weeks down the line. So, I mean, I think the NFL roster moves aren't anywhere near to being complete. If they're gonna keep going as an executive, I'd be looking at rosters, seeing who's heavy and pass rushers, whether young or old, or maybe even like, let's go down to the Rams right now. They're $400,000 over the cap. They got to make cap by 4:00 today, or there's penalties. Let's see if there's somebody down there that you can go and trade for and bring up and get moving, that you want. I mean, I don't think Aaron Donald's available, but they might have somebody else that can rush the passer, and, you go shopping down there and gives them some cap relief right away. So, there's some situations where I think you can work not only who got cut, but who's heavy, and then also who make a Hail Mary offer at somebody too for something. I mean, shoot, Jacksonville's open for business if there's anybody left on that roster.
Talking to David Turner and John Murphy here. Von Miller, obviously a superstar in the NFL. The big news as we wake up this morning and talk the state of football. Also happening yesterday, these contracts being handed out in the NFL, they're hot, they're heavy. DeAndre Hopkins, 2-year extension worth $54.5 million, 42.5 guaranteed, which will bring his Cardinals career to a 5-year, $94 million total. And the grin that he had behind the COVID mask yesterday, signing that contract on Twitter, David, you could see it through the mask. And from my understanding, you're saying that he negotiated this deal himself. Impressive.
The reports are that, the reports I'm getting here in Arizona is that he negotiated it himself. And he was bragging to teammates about not having to pay agent fees and stuff, and that he got it all done. And it's a great deal for the player. And I think the player has earned the money. If you've watched his career in Houston and everything, this guy is one of the best receivers I think people don't talk enough about. The playmaking ability, his catch radius. I mean, he makes quarterbacks look better than they are. And again, before Deshaun was there, I mean, he played with a cast of characters that really were unmentionable, that you can't really, sit there and think about and remember too many of them. So, and he's built this career on his skill level alone. So I think it's well deserved. Now, when you talk about it on the organizational side, I'm like, Steve Keim, what are you doing? You still have no offensive line. You have no one protecting Kyle Murray, and you're putting in all this investment in a receiver, and you still have Larry Fitzgerald on your cap, who's carrying, I mean, it's less than what he used to, but he's still carrying a favorable amount of money. So you got a lot of money tied up in receiver and very little money and skill levels on your offensive line. And the only pass rusher you have is Jones. So it's like, Steve, how are you building your team right now? I can walk to their facility. They're so close to my house. And it's just like, I would love to get in his brain and try to figure out what he's doing, because I want a winner here in Arizona that we can, start thinking Super Bowl runs with.
Well, we'll preview that Arizona game at the end of the week. I differ with you, David. I like the direction that the Cardinals are trending. So let's see what John Murphy thinks. Hopkins here goes along with Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella. You factor in the Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray factor. This could be a team very similar to the Chiefs of a year ago that just gets points on the board early, often, and the other team is just playing catch up here.
Yeah, I think what you have to look at here is, initially it gets the guy that you cornerstoned your offseason around, which was getting Kyler Murray. What you're hoping for is, a 3 or 4 year run with Kyler Murray, the same way that, what he did with Deshaun Watson. Now, if that works, it gets the cornerstone of your organization in Murray, headed in the right direction. Now, a couple of areas that I think could be different is, because of the style of offense that they're running, maybe that's kind of more along the lines of the Cardinals thinking the offensive line is important, but we're not going to be either drafting guys that high or investing in the highest end guys, because we can put an O-line out there positionally that is more for the tempo of their offensive style. Right. So, I mean, where he's used that offense, and the clubs that have used this style offense have not always had the best offensive lines, in the league, but they've had very productive offenses. If you find the right guys who can just basically be there for the shortest amount of time, don't get beat initially off the snap because the ball's out. Right. So if he is projecting that this is our offense, and we are a ball to the quarterback, ball out of the quarterback's hands as fast as any team in the league, then you might be able to get by with some of their offensive linemen not being the juggernaut, double-digit salaries, that you look at the Dallas Cowboys or the Titans, even the Colts are in that direction, and other teams that would be kind of hemorrhaging, money at that spot. The other ones you have to look at is at some point Fitzgerald's money is going and not going to be on that cap with their, is Patrick Peterson a guy that's not a lifer, out there based on production and age and position, and is he a guy at some point? Does he play corner his whole career? Does he end up doing kind of a Woodson, type deal at some point? And does he, like I said, is he a lifer, on there? So I think, when you have that quarterback contract, now they double down, and take a guy like Simmons on the other side of the ball. So you have a playmaker there that's not making a ton. There's a little flexibility, but if it doesn't work, like David said, it could go sideways in a hurry, if it doesn't work. Now, but the number one thing is you got a guy that's now content. It's not an overvalued contract. It's at the value, the 18 to 20, that the other guys got. I mean, if anything, if I was Steve Keim the first time I'm at the combine and I see Tom Tedesco, I punch him in the face, for giving Keenan Allen $20 million. I kneecap him. I call Tanya Harding, over there and, kneecap Telesco for doing that. Like you could have saved that one until after I got done. And we both could have saved ourselves some money, but it's the NFL business now, right? Like an 18 to $20 million, wide receiver, that's kind of the market you want to live in. If you want to have, that kind of guy and, the news will not be what he gets. It's now who's on deck. Right. So the next guy on deck, like you heard Ryan Kelly last week, he said, hey, it's great to be the highest paid center. I'm on the clock because somebody's coming to get me. The next contract will make me the second highest paid center. I think the interesting ones will be, what kind of number does Kamara come in at? 13 and a half ish. That'll be very interesting money to see how the Saints are able to play that contract out. The Rams wanting to get some more stuff done now, to have kind of their numbers in mind for the future. Do they get something done, with Cooper Kupp? There's probably 3 or 4 more guys, that will want to get stuff done. And I thought the other interesting one that clearly got over, gets kind of, pushed aside with all the other big numbers coming out. But a year before Nick Chubb comes up for a contract, Kareem Hunt gets a new deal. And Kareem Hunt is now making about 6.5 to 6.75 a year. That puts him like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 at running back. Are you really affording next year to have those two receivers, both backs, and all the young players the Browns have? I wonder if, is that a little foreshadowing on what their plan or what their plan is there with Nick Chubb? Because it's kind of interesting to give the 1B running back a contract earlier than the 1A running back who's going to be asking for a double-digit, 10, 12, $13 million deal. Because like I said, I would think that Kamara, if it gets done here, it's not going to be the 14 he wants. It won't be the 12 the Saints wanted. It'll probably have to be 13 and change, and you'll see a huge front load in terms of signing bonus, but then a huge backloaded deal to where Kamara will not see a lot of his, base salary will not be driven in this deal because they'll need that to kind of be very low and not impacted by this for now. But there will project that Kamara can make his money when Drew Brees and others are not making theirs.
Well, I wonder how many people in our listening audience understood the Tanya Harding reference. But let's welcome in our next guest here on the State of Football. She is a former professional football player in her own rights, a world champion, a team captain, and a 2010 gold medalist. Oh, by the way, an all-star reporter at KCTV over there in Kansas City. She's Danny Welniak. She joins us right now to preview this Thursday night football showdown tomorrow between the Texans and the Chiefs. Good morning, Danny. How are you today?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing great. How is everybody holding up? And we're really excited. It's Red Friday here in Kansas City. So the entire town is painted red and they are celebrating their Super Bowl champs. So it's wild, but hope y'all are enjoying it as much as we are.
Well, we don't have as much pride as those Chiefs do. They're defending that Vince Lombardi trophy, and everybody's gunning for them, as we mentioned here earlier. Von Miller going down, a big blow to the Broncos' chances here. But, I saw yesterday you were streaming the Andy Reid press conference. So I was wondering, as they gear up for this first matchup, any key takeaways that you were able to take from Andy?
Yeah, well, from Andy specifically, he's always very vague. So I think every time we talk to him, he's like, okay, we're facing a good team. This is going to be, a challenge for us. And from all of it, I think the biggest thing for me is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be used a lot in this Chiefs offense. And I think coming into the season, a lot of us weren't really sure that would be the case. We thought Damian Williams was going to be the guy because of what he did in the postseason and his production last year and even the year before. But when he opted out of the season, we didn't really know what that running back room was going to look like. They ended up signing DeAndre Washington during the offseason, and we thought he'd be a big contributor, but they ended up cutting him and moving him to the practice squad. So you're left with guys like Darrell Williams and Darwin Thompson, who got some playing time last year, but weren't huge contributing factors. So then when they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it was like, okay, they've added this extra piece. What's he going to look like? And now all of a sudden he's their number one guy, and he's going to be taking a majority of the snaps at running back. And so the stuff that Andy talked about yesterday and how they plan on using him, and even Tyrann Mathieu and Clyde himself are really eager about what they're going to see from him coming out of the backfield, and mainly as a receiver. So I thought it was very enlightening that Tyrann didn't necessarily talk about how good he was as a runner. He talked about his vision, but he was like, when we get 5 wide, I can't wait to see what this offense can do because of what Clyde is bringing as that little extra factor to this legion of zooms. So I think a lot of people and a lot of fantasy owners out there should be ready to use Clyde in that as more of a receiving back than maybe a running back.
Legion of Zoom. I like that. That is, to me, I'm like, that's my takeaway from the whole day, no matter what else is said today. The Legion of Zoom is it. So I've already found my takeaway. Thank you, Danny. I am good. My question to you, though, is, and again, as a personnel guy and an old school guy, I'm like, when I think of this guy in the pass game, yeah, it's exciting. When I saw him play in college, his ability to make his short area quickness is so good. And making people miss in space and in tight areas is ridiculous. His balance and body control is unbelievable. How is his pass protecting going to pick up the blitzes? How is his body going to handle that type of stuff? Because, yeah, it's always, what we're sitting here talking about, like, right before you got on, I don't know if you heard us, we were talking about Arizona, Rick's heartthrob this year. And I'm like, you know what? It's a great offense in college. But Steve Spurrier, when he had his spread and he tried to bring it to the NFL, it failed because pass rush gets there too quick and the ball and the pocket gets tight too quick. And if you don't have enough people pass protecting, these guys are just too good in the NFL to do 5-man protections. So how is his pat? When I worked with Tom Rathman, he always said, I want to know if a guy can pass protect to make sure he can be a back for me. Has there been any talk about this guy's pass protection, if he's going to be such a key player?
Yeah, that was actually the biggest thing whenever Damian opted out and they said, okay, Clyde's going to be our number one guy. It was, hey, can he take care of Patrick Mahomes? Can he take care of your $500 million man? Like, there's no reason that he should be starting if he can't do this coming out of college. And Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, the very first thing he said was, he will not play if he cannot pass protect. And so that I thought was very insightful from the fact that that Darrell Williams can pass protect. Darwin Thompson still has to work on that, I think, from that perspective. But his size, I think, concerned a lot of people because Clyde is not very big. One of the big jokes running around camp was whether he or Tyreek were the shortest person on the roster. So Tyreek thinks that he's got the edge on that one, but I actually haven't had an opportunity to measure them up side by side. So I'm not sure. So I'm not weighing in on that one. But I think that was a little bit of a concern. And I don't think that should be the case. Andy Reid's blocking schemes are very intricate. And I think that can be tough for a rookie, but this guy has such a high IQ that he's able to pick that up. Plus the fact that the offensive line is a veteran offensive line. The only guy that they're really plugging and playing in there is Kelechi Osemele because Laurent Duvernay-Tardif opted out. So I think that takes care of him a lot from that perspective. And if you have him mostly doing, getting out in the flats, doing a lot of stuff where he can kind of, block and release, then that actually gives him a little bit of the upper hand in this style of offense. So I think he should be okay. Everybody in that Chiefs organization has told us that he is a good pass protector and that he can block really well. So at this point, all I can do is take them for their word, because going from college to the NFL level is totally different, like you mentioned. So I guess we'll just have to see come Thursday night.
Yeah, honestly, I'm excited. Like you said, if you're doing a chip block out to he's going to be a nightmare for teams to cover, between the linebackers having struggles with him, and I think safety's even going to have struggles with him in coverage. And I'm really excited. I think the Chiefs going to hit nitrous on Thursday night, and they're just going to smoke these Texans. I don't see them being close.
Yeah, they're almost close to double-digit favorites, I think, now up there. John, bring us on home.
Well, I liked how basically what she's trying to say is that Andy Reid is saying they plan to use Clyde Edwards-Helaire pretty much the way that she used to get used. So, I mean, they're trying to find a way to get the ball in his hands every way possible. And if you look it up, 89 was that person back in the day. So letting you know, she's kind of keeping it under wraps there, but she might have been there Tyreek Hill. She was kind of Clyde Edwards-Helaire of her league. So if you were playing fantasy football in that time frame, either one of those two would probably be good choices, and kind of steals my thunder of who my rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, probably will end up being later on. But I think that's one of the things that actually earned him the shot last year at LSU, was that they had so many other younger backs in the stable who the blocking part was not happening whatsoever. And it really wasn't something that a lot of their other guys were good at. And that's what made him get on the field. And one of the things the LSU staff, would mention over and over again was, he's height deficient, but he's not built deficient.
Right.
He was able to kind of anchor down. And I think going against guys, that he was going against on the regular, at practice at LSU, at least gets him set up for some of the speed of the game. And even if there's a blocking assignment or two missed, I think the plays that you're going to get out of him will sort of probably make up for any of that. But has there been, obviously it's a Super Bowl team. It's right. Everybody thinks this is a club that's a no doubt, multiple Super Bowl winning club in the future. Has there been any younger guys, anybody that stands out to you that maybe the average Chief fan, doesn't know about, that maybe come Thursday night, or maybe it's week 5, that you're seeing in the highlights that, is there a guy that kind of stood out in camp to you?
So I've got two guys that actually kind of flew under the radar for me that could be key contributors to this team moving forward. Is a second round pick out of this year's draft. His name is Willie Gage Jr. out of Mississippi State. And he right now, obviously with having to learn this defensive playbook and coming into a season where there's no preseason and diving right in, is the backup Sam right now, Sam linebacker, and he also plays Buck in the Chiefs nickel defense. And he has been so athletic during training camp, and he has this, I know this is coach speak, but he has this motor where he just does not stop. Like, all of the defensive guys are these just bulldog style guys, and they just go at it 110%. But this guy is just at a different level, and he's young. He's got that energy. I just love what he's bringing to the table. And while he's backing up Damian Wilson right now, I think he has the potential to be one of the starters and a main key starter on this team once he does get his feet underneath him. So linebacker's been one of those positions that has kind of not necessarily hurt the Chiefs, but it definitely hasn't been their strong point over the last couple of years. So with him and Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson, I think they can build up this defense, and definitely that like center core, that second level for the Chiefs. And then my other guy is a receiver, actually, who his name is Marcus Kemp. And last year during the preseason, he tore his ACL in one of the final preseason games. And it was so devastating because he had such a good preseason. This year, he makes the roster. And we're always talking about David, the Legion of Zoom. And so he just kind of adds an extra element to that because he's tall, he's athletic, his routes are really good, and I think that he's a guy to watch out for along with those other speedsters.
Marcus Kemp from the University of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Danny Welniak giving us some names we need to know. Obviously, Willie Gage, a guy that we were very high on talent-wise, first-round grade, some off-the-field stuff there, maybe having him slide into the Chiefs' lap for the second round, a blessing in disguise. Danny, we'll get you out of here. Last one for you, though. I know the Chiefs were the first team to have opened their door to fans at the training camp. Will they be one of the NFL teams welcoming the fans to the game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they're kind of the guinea pigs of the National Football League. And even from a media perspective, they've told us, hey, you know, like this is a first. Like we're just trying to figure this out. So kind of bear with us. And I know that the 2 training camps that they allowed fans in were really successful. And the guys absolutely loved the fact that there was some kind of crowd noise and that they're not going to have to pipe in crowd noise like Major League Baseball, and it'll be a little bit more authentic. So I think from that perspective, it does give the Chiefs a little bit of a home field advantage. I know that people have come out and coaches have come out and said it's not going to make a difference, but I think that because of how crazy the fans are here in Kansas City, I do think that it's going to make a little bit of a difference to have that 22% capacity on Thursday night, especially when you're opening up as the defending Super Bowl champs and you get your banner raised and all of that fanfare that comes with it. So I think it's a good thing, and I'm really excited to see how they maintain all of the protocols that they've tried to set in place. I mean, it's hard when people are actively eating and drinking all the time at these football games. But I think it's a good thing as we try to get society back to some kind of normal.
I agree. And we are 35 hours away now from a NFL kickoff. It seems so long to get to this point, but great job, Danny. Hey, do us a favor. If the Chiefs do make it back like everybody's anticipating, come back for our Super Bowl preview and break it down for us, would you?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. That's Danny Welniak. Make sure you follow her at KCTV. Danny, that's DANI. A little bit of an abbreviated edition here on the State of Football. I want to thank our guest, David Turner, at Maverick Sports, John Murphy, at DraftJM13. Of course, Rick Saratella here, breaking it down all week long, weekdays at 9 Eastern. Make sure you check us out tomorrow. We'll have Aaron Wilson from the Houston Chronicle to break down the other side with the Houston Texans. Till the next time, everybody.